The Republicans who've been telling us for years what a big concern it is that we have a large national debt, they want to increase the national debt by $4 trillion, right? And obviously they want to do that to feed the hungry and to house the homeless and to make sure that everybody has health care, right? Well, maybe not. I mean, it is so ugly and so ridiculous. What they want to do is to increase the national debt. They want to cut Medicaid and other desperately needed programs for working people. To do what? To give massive tax breaks primarily to the wealthy and large corporations.
In today's video, Bernie Sanders sat down with Brian Tyler Cohen and absolutely went off on Doge and MAGA over their so-called cost-cutting crusade. Doge, a total disaster. They're slashing essential government departments, cutting healthcare, food aid, veterans programs, all in the name of efficiency. But let's be real, it's not about saving money. It's about gutting services for working people while handing massive tax breaks for billionaires. Bernie lays out the receipts, exposes the hypocrisy, and drops some serious truth bombs. So let's dive in and watch how Bernie Sanders exposes MAGA and Doge in today's video.
That's what this whole thing is about. Just keep your eyes on the prize. That's what it's about.
Well, you know, a lot of the branding, a lot of the messaging that Republicans have been putting forward is that they're cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. And so they immediately go after USAID, they immediately go after the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And so what does it say that while they're nickel and diming these programs, which by the way, as far as the CFPB is concerned, that's a program that costs $800 million a year, returned $21 billion to consumers who've been ripped off by predatory banks. You look at USAID, 0.5% of the budget delivers essential programs like clean water, food for refugees, HIV prevention, and helps us with soft power around the world. And so you have these massive benefits for a fraction of the cost, and that's to nickel and dime us out of those programs. But when you're looking to pass tax cuts that would cost us $4.5 trillion, apparently that's totally fine.
I think as a nation, we've got to take a deep breath. I think you framed the question exactly right. Look, is there waste in every government program? Yeah, there is. Is there waste in every corporation? Yeah, there is. But what they will do is use the issue of waste to kind of destroy entire programs. In terms of USAID, you make very important points. This is a program which is keeping hungry children alive, treating people who have HIV and other preventable diseases. And in terms of quote unquote soft power, what it means is that all over the world, people are saying, thank you, Americans. Thank you for keeping us alive, for feeding our children, for giving us some housing. And that is a positive for us in terms of dealing with global issues all over the world, winning support from people. Going after the Consumer Financial CFP, I always get the initials wrong.
Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB.
All right, this is something that protects consumers from predatory banks. And going after that will just make it easier for banks and large corporations to rip us off. So to answer your question, this is exactly what is going on. When there are programs that help desperate people, we kill them. When there are programs that help large corporations and big banks, those are the programs Republicans will support.
Bernie Sanders is absolutely on point here, and if anything, not enough people are paying attention to how blatant the hypocrisy really is. Republicans, especially the MAGA wing, love to scream about the national debt when it's convenient, usually when it's time to block healthcare, education, or food assistance. But suddenly, that $4.5 trillion price tag for tax cuts to the rich? Crickets. And that's where DOGE, the so-called Department of Government Efficiency, comes in. It's being used as a smokescreen. Cutting waste sounds good until you realize they're cutting programs like USAID, which costs less than 1% of the budget but literally saves lives, or the CFBP, which protects everyday Americans from getting ripped off by banks and actually returns money to the people. And let's be clear, if you're more upset about feeding kids overseas than you are about $4 trillion in tax breaks for the ultra wealthy, your outrage isn't really about the deficit. It's about power.
So then what's your message to Trump supporters who voted in this election because they believed, after listening to Trump, that it was a referendum on high prices, on the cost of goods, and yet instead of lifting a finger to do anything to mitigate the cost of high prices, they're instead focused on stripping programs to give them the pretense of cutting waste while at the same time delivering yet another handout to millionaires and billionaires?
What I would say to Trump supporters are two things. Focus not on what Trump says, but what he does. And what he's going to do is cut programs that you and your families need. Do you really think it's appropriate to cut Medicaid substantially? Those are families, your families, may not be able to get the health care that they need. Your mother may not be able to get into the nursing home that she has to get into because Medicaid pays a substantial part of that. We're going to do away with aid to students who want to go to college. Your kids are going to have to go more deeply into debt when we cut back on higher educational programs. So the other thing that I would say is that if you are an honest conservative, you believe in the Constitution of the United States. You do not believe that the richest guy in the history, in modern history, can go around unilaterally cutting programs that were authorized by Congress. So if you're a Trump supporter and you're a working class person, understand that they're going after you. And if you believe in the Constitution and democracy, they're also trying to undermine that.
But Senator, we've seen Trump deploy this strategy before. He did it in 2016, where he came into office on the back of promises that he would make a healthcare plan that was more comprehensive and more affordable, of a jobs boom that never materialized, a manufacturing renaissance that never materialized, of an infrastructure plan that never materialized, and now he's doing the same thing here. And so how do you square that gap, square that circle, basically, where you have him saying one thing, consistently failing to deliver, and yet the message doesn't seem to get through?
It's just not just failure to deliver. He lies all the time, and this is a whole other problem. And Trump has, I'm not going to say the politicians throughout the ages haven't lied. People lie. But he has taken it to an entirely new level. And part of their strategy is just to lie and lie and lie. You go after USAID, you come up with some crazy, outrageous lies to justify what you're doing.
Right, like they're sending $50 million worth of condoms to
completely.
Gaza.
I mean, these guys, and Musk amplifies that on Twitter, etc. I think what we have got to do, which the Democratic Party is at the moment incapable of doing, is organizing at the grassroots level. And I'm going to be going around the country trying to do that, trying to get working people and young people, people of color, just the majority of the people to stand up and say, you know what? When 60% of our people are living paycheck to paycheck, when 85 million people have no health insurance, you do not need to give tax breaks to billionaires and cut programs that working families desperately need. Let's focus on the needs of workers. What do we need to do? We need to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. You think Trump and the Republicans are going to do that? Ain't going to do that. We need to make it easy for workers to join unions. You think Trump and the Republicans are going to do that? No, they've actually neutered the National Labor Relations Board, which will make it harder for workers to get their union victory certified. Do you think Trump is going to do anything real about lowering the cost of prescription drugs? I doubt it very much.
MAGA Republicans, with Trump and Elon Musk leading the charge under this so-called Department of Government Efficiency, are selling voters a fantasy. They're claiming they're going to cut waste, but what they're really doing is gutting programs that regular people rely on: Medicaid, student aid, housing assistance, while planning to hand another round of massive tax cuts to billionaires. That's not efficient. That's class warfare.
So what we have got to do is focus on the needs of working people. What are they? Healthcare system is broken. Childcare system is broken. Housing crisis of enormous consequence. Climate change is threatening the entire planet. And we can create a whole lot of jobs moving to sustainable energy. Stay focused on what is important to working people. Expose the hypocrisy of Trump. I think that's kind of what we got to do.
There are those who would say that Democrats did focus on those issues in the lead up to this past election cycle, that you had people talking about healthcare, reproductive rights, workers' rights, and that it wasn't enough to overcome the messaging that was coming out of the right. And so how do you contend with that?
I don't quite agree. I don't think people were talking about healthcare very much at all. I mean, what they were saying is, we will defend the Affordable Care Act, right? Against cuts. Republicans will want to cut it. We will defend it. Fine. That's good. Do you think that's enough? The current healthcare system is broken. It is a disaster. We're spending twice as much per person on healthcare any other nation, 85 million uninsured, 60,000 people a year dying because they don't get to a doctor.
Yeah.
We pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. It's not enough to defend the Affordable Care Act. We need to do what every other nation on earth does. Guarantee health care to all people as a human right. That's why I strongly support Medicare for all. But what the Democrats have got to do is come up with a strong progressive agenda. Not only do we have 800,000 people who are homeless, you know what else we got? Millions of people spending 40, 50, 60% of their limited incomes on housing. What about a massive housing program, putting people to work, good union jobs, lowering the cost of housing? You got to think big, not small. To Trump's credit, I mean, he lies all the time, etc. He thinks big.
Yeah.
Democrats think incrementally. Maybe in 18 years, we will have accomplished this. Not good enough.
Bernie Sanders hits the nail on the head again, and honestly, he's saying what so many working people are feeling right now. Our healthcare system, still a disaster. The US government spent twice as much per person as other countries and somehow still leave tens of millions uninsured. Prescription drug prices out of control. Childcare is unaffordable. The housing crisis is exploding. And the US is facing a climate emergency, but instead of addressing any of that, MAGA Republicans want to slash Medicaid and student aid while giving billionaires more tax cuts. That's not reform, that's just robbery. And Bernie's not just pointing out the problems, he's pushing real solutions. Universal healthcare, a massive investment in affordable housing, union jobs, climate action. It's bold, it's needed, and it's long overdue. Honestly, Democrats need to stop playing defense and start thinking big. If the US want to actually make people's lives better, they've got to stop nickel and diming real solutions and start organizing around real change. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out ground news in the description down below.